Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you so much for joining me here. We're taking a quick look, of course, at Bitcoin. Important stuff on the back end here. There's some outliers that I think we need to make sure to pay attention to with macro liquidation levels, but also some CryptoNet ETF inflow here for a change. We saw 6 days in a row of ETF net outflow, and we have our first green day there. So we're going to talk about that and what that means for us, and just make sure we understand, kind of a well-rounded approach here. How do we approach this kind of situation leading into a weekend? Let's take a look. All right, folks, before we jump into this wonderful backend data here, I want to talk to you about something that's really important to me, and it's hitting that like button, commenting below when you watch my videos. Really appreciate that. Thank you again so much. It's crazy how low of views I get, but the click-through rating is really high. I mean, it's basically just YouTube being terrible about recommending my content, but on the same accord, the longer you watch, the better, the more you interact, the better things are for the views. So I really appreciate that. Thank you again for being just a phenomenal part of my life. You know who you are. You've been watching probably every day for the last few years. I've been, in the space for over 4.5, almost 5 years now, and it's been a wonderful experience. So thanks again for just being a great part of my life. So back in data, we're going to talk about this here because this is important. I wanted to kind of discuss this because when we look at liquidation, yesterday we saw there was a ton of liquidation to the upside with very little to the downside. The price spiked up, it pulled back again this morning. We're seeing a bit of a double bottom, but what I want to get at here is that the last 24 hours of trading volume, we're closer to that upper liquidation range. In other words, between here and 102.5, roughly 103K, there's probably a good, I haven't done the math on it, but it's somewhere in the range of 5 to 10 billion in liquidation. Now, keep in mind that number is amplified based on the amount of leverage being used. It's not technically that exact dollar amount, but it's still a lot of liquidation. Okay, and that's all closer to the upside than the downside. Not to say there isn't still some below. Of course, there's new chunks here, but this is more recent liquidation, and the local liquidation is less likely to get hit because those are some longs that just kind of entered the market in the recent past couple of hours, right? So please understand that. Furthermore, too, when it comes to overall liquidation, there's still a lot more left to the upside. While there's still a small chunk between 96 and 100,000, we'll look at that next on the heat map. It's important to recognize there's a tremendous amount more of liquidation to the upside, kind of implying that potential reversals on board or on deck, and that could very well happen. When we look here at liquidation too, we can see, of course, the same thing happening here as well for Bitcoin. Actually, why don't we refresh this? This might be slightly dated. Let's go ahead and double check. Yeah, it's better now, but it's still bad, right? We're still at a 3 to 1 ratio for shorts versus longs getting liquidated, or sorry, long versus shorts. There's three times the amount of longs versus shorts. But if you look at altcoins, a lot of altcoins are starting to zero out. In other words, there's just as many longs as shorts on Ethereum, for example. That tells us that ETH is reaching its tentative bottom at 3,200. Same thing as well with Solana. Well, actually, Solana is more synonymous with Bitcoin. And then we look at XRP, almost a lot worse than Bitcoin. All right, so ETH is one of the outliers, I guess. But the concept here is that we're not seeing a significant imbalance here where a lot of altcoins are getting hit really hard. They're actually doing fairly well in the overall sense, and that speaks to the crypto market cap, which we can talk about here. But mainly I want to touch on this here, and this isn't relevant to Ethereum. This is more so Bitcoin. And this was 2 days ago. Keep in mind, this ETF net inflow or outflow is effectively predated, or it's in the past, right? Post-dated rather. And we can see that 11/5, roughly on Wednesday, we saw a large ETF inflow for Bitcoin, and it was outflowing for about 6 business days straight. All right. So that kind of tells us that we see this little potential bottoming out period where there's more money flowing into ETFs, therefore more interest in buying that low $100,000 range. And that's usually something I like to focus on or kind of just be mindful of with trend reversals. Oftentimes you'll see an ETF net inflows occur roughly when that happens, okay? Now, it's hard to tell because it's a lagging indicator, but it is still nonetheless something to be mindful of. Now, take a look here. This is the last 1 month of basically open interest on the right. As per usual, we're seeing that $110,000 to $111,000 range is that significant amount of open interest. Okay, so if we do end up going on a run, make sure you understand and/or secure profits between now and 111,000. That's a solid resistance for us. Now, when we look at open interest here locally, we can see there's a lot in the 99 to 101K range. We talked about this yesterday, but it just kind of reinforces support at that double bottom, that lower level here for us. We can see liquidation short delta is still high, right? So still a lot of shorts in the market. They could very well get squeezed out though, of course. I sent this update here earlier, just kind of showing you that, hey, these liquidation amounts above the price, they're concerning here for a short-term rally, which is good, don't get me wrong, obviously, depending on the direction you're heading, but also just something that's kind of it's par for the course, because when we see this many shorts in the market, we have too many shorts for too long, there will inevitably be a short squeeze that happens, or they'll eventually secure profits, which is less likely. Most people are too greedy in this market. That's why market makers do exactly the opposite of what you think is logical. They secure profits, and that's why we see the market moving quickly. Okay. All that said, liquidation here from the last 7-day perspective, there's still once more a chunk between 97 and 99K. So don't get it in your head that I'm saying that we're bullish, we're going to go straight up from here. We're just seeing some early signs of reversal is all. The truth is we could very well see another candle wick down. I wouldn't be surprised or put it past the market makers. However, to clarify, on the 4-hour time frame, we can see we are at an overextended state here on TD sequential, just kind of letting us know we've been moving in the same direction for 36 hours. It's really common for price action to slow down when that happens, at least for a shorter period, before it reverses itself. Now, it's not a guarantee, of course, because you saw we had a previous night on TD sequential and the market got even greedier, right? We were supposed to bottom out that 104, 105K range. No, no, 98,000 was the next stop, right? So it's not a guarantee, but oftentimes when you see these overextended states, the price does have a tendency of wanting to reverse itself. So this is still probably very premature, but it's also kind of an early sign that letting us know that we might actually see a green weekend. And to touch on that too, just so you know, when you have red days throughout the entire week, it's really common for weekends to either go sideways or up, if you will, or see it to be green. I'm not saying it's going to be a super strong green weekend, but I do think we are more likely to see some kind of altcoin rally this weekend within small margins. Okay. All that said, we're still below both descending trends, so we're not in good shape at all. Macro structure hasn't changed, so truthfully, Bitcoin isn't looking phenomenal, right? We have to zoom into the hourly time frame to kind of see kind of where we're at here, and we're still underneath the cloud here. We're still in a descending trend. There's a lot of reasons why it's not a great call to consider a long or a short. Okay, shorting the bottom here, this feels like a double bottom. It seems like a bad idea, but also taking a long, it's inherently more risky. Okay, so that's kind of how it is. That's how the market makers they've done their job really well, because everyone's too scared to buy. And at this point, they're just waiting for volume to pile up in either direction. They're going to go ahead and hit it. All right. So as we're seeing right now, we're starting to see this overextension leading into more liquidation above the price and below, more incentive for the price to go higher on the short term. Okay. So those are my thoughts there. What are yours? Why don't you comment below? Let's take a quick look here at some altcoins next. All right, folks, let's take a quick look here at Litecoin. We can see a nice pump here in the last hour worth of trading. Now, the benefit here is the fact that we've broken our descending trend line, but we don't want to get too out of control with long positions trying to FOMO into the top, because there's definitely potential for that. We'll talk about this key level resistance that we're testing right now, just to kind of be mindful of it, and also look at some backend data here first. So starting off with Litecoin's backend here. First of all, when it comes to open interest, there isn't a heck of a lot of open interest here. We got to kind of zoom in really hard to see it. The truth is 90 is that local area of open interest, followed that by 100 is kind of like the average. So that just kind of tells us that every $10 roughly we're seeing those levels. So we could presume that 110 would also be an area of open interest. That's generally how coins typically like to trade. They use large round numbers. There's more interest in those large round numbers. All that said though, liquidation delta shifted here within the last 2 or 3 hours from bearish to bullish quite significantly. So we can see we're at about 250 million in longs versus short liquidation. When it comes to liquidation, we can see this pretty heavy area about 102, 103 is just shy of getting swept here and or getting swept at the moment. Okay, so all the liquidation here locally has been destroyed. So anybody shorting the last 24 hours just got absolutely hammered. All the more reason why I've been emphasizing being very careful taking shorts at what feels like the bottom right now, because Bitcoin holding that that 99 to 101K range is a pretty good sign here with that double bottom, likelihood of pumping here this weekend for altcoins, or maybe even just say a continuation rather, because the pump's already kind of happening. All right. All that being said, we want to presume with a volume coming into this coin that the price action will sustain itself and go higher. That's kind of the concept. But from a macro perspective, Litecoin is actually looking better than most other altcoins. And let me explain more so about that. So if we kind of zoom in here to ever since 2025, the range that we have currently, we have a lot of resistance above the price at 121, more specifically 120, and then 103 here locally. Okay, so we're right there at that secondary point of control. So we have a decent amount of volume in those two ranges, emphasizing resistance since they're above us. All that being said though, when we look at the overall scenario here, we're back up over 50 in the RSI with stochastic swinging up and MACD converging. This coin really looks primed and ready to rock and roll. It's a very good sign. Those are signs I like to look for, that it does require Bitcoin to not pull back much further. But also, if you look at how well it's doing versus the majority of the market, we're up 17% so far, where most other altcoins are only 5% up. So it's a good sign here. Once more, sustainability, increasing the odds of sustainability because of all this volume. All right. Now, a 4-hour time frame, just to kind of clarify once more, local high 102.5, round number 103, it's our macro point of control. Good news is our local point of control is at roughly $98, so haven't broken through that. We could very well see a pivot and a bounce off that level. So I would say a long on the $98 to $100 range seems very optimal at this point. Even though the price could continue to pull back further, we may even see a bullish backtest. There's ascending trend line. That's a lot less likely with this amount of volume flowing in. The key takeaway here is if we close above 103 today, that'll be a strong sign for further continuation higher. If we close below that, but also maintain above 98, I think that'd also be a bullish sign. Preferably looking for a closure above $98 today for Litecoin. If you're looking for a new exchange or possibly just want to help support the channel, Bitunix has got you covered. We've been partnered with this exchange for over 2 years. It's been our fan favorite for our community. And the reason why is because they take really good care of you. They offer trading reward bonuses as well as a reduction in fees. Best exchange I would recommend at this point. Link down below for more information. All right, let's move on to Link, see what's going on here. This coin is underwhelming versus versus Litecoin, but it also doing very well on its own, breaking its local high structure. So we'll talk about that. Let's look at the backend data here for Chainlink, and kind of to see roughly what we're looking at here. The circumstance is that we're kind of stuck in this $15 range. Now, I talked previously about wanting to short the 1625 area, so we're going to talk about that area of confluence. That was a local high, kind of a previous area I was wanting to consider a short. Is more so a local bottom that hasn't been retested as a new high. So be careful taking along with this coin past the $16 mark. It's a decent chance it slows down that range. Liquidation delta is still high to the downside, implying that there's more shorts than longs in this coin still. We take a look here at Chainlink though, we zoom in a little bit, we can see a big chunk of liquidation between 15 and 16. So I would not be surprised if $16 is the next target. Keep in mind, there's a lot of liquidation upwards of even $17. So I'm not saying that we're not going to go higher. I'm just telling you that there are some key levels of resistance we want to be mindful of. And here's that level, just kind of touch on it, jumping right in. Our previous low structure where we retest that level a couple of times, at least that range, right, of 16 to 1630. We can see that area hasn't been tested yet. So hypothetically, the price comes up here. I still feel like 1625 would be a decent area to consider a short. Once more, if the lot can change between now and then, if bullish momentum continues to precipitate upwards and Bitcoin closes at 101, 102.5 or higher today, then we're going to be in much better shape to see that progression further up. But at this point here, Chainlink is underwhelming versus majority of other coins. But once more, you zoom in a little bit further, you see the hourly time frame here. We can recognize that we have broken our local high. Right, so this is usually a good sign when you can see a lot of candle wicks and candlestick closures at this 1536 level. That tells me that's potentially the new bottom for us. However, keep in mind there's a fair value gap that was created, so we may even sweep down to this low $15 range before the next leg up if we see that pullback happen. Between now and then, regardless of those things happening, whether 15 or 1530 gets hit first, the concept remains the same. I think 16 to 1630, that local resistance range, is more likely to get hit next beforehand, right? So I think I'm still very much short-term bullish in this coin, but I'm going to need to see a solid closure above the local low here at 16-ish to make sure that we feel confident in taking a long, at least a longer long, if that makes sense, one that goes further. We're still below our descending trend line. We got a lot of resistance above us. Try not to be uber bullish just yet. We're not quite there. All right, take a look here at AVAX. Is one of my highly requested coins, so I definitely want to cover this here for you today, folks, and just make sure we understand kind of where we're at. So previous lows, we're kind of right in that range at 1650. We saw a previous low here back in June, and we've been maintaining right in the same range. We're at a 9 on TD sequential, overextended like we've addressed here with a lot of other altcoins. If you saw my Ethereum, Sui, Solana, and XRP analysis, you'll know that those coins are all looking fairly bullish in their range because they're overextended very similar to this. So this coin's no exception. So it's kind of good and bad. It's good that it's no exception because it's moving synonymous with altcoins right now, whereas money is flowing into altcoins and outside of Bitcoin. To touch on that too, I posted this on our Twitter, Telegram, and Discord. You can see that altcoin dominance is increasing, stablecoin dominance is pulling back along with Bitcoin dominance. That's generally a favorable sign. So Ethereum isn't absorbing the market cap. Mostly altcoins are, right? And ideally, they're the top 100 coins, mainly the ones that we like to trade. So that's kind of just a back end summary there. But what I'm getting at here for AVAX is that there's a lot of resistance above us, right? 20 to 20.5 is that heavy area of resistance. That's that point of control above us. More specifically, that area of open interest. This is the macro structure, keep in mind. We zoom in a little bit further, we can see there's some lower ranges, but that isn't super relevant on a push like this, right? $20 is definitely an area you want to make sure to be mindful of. You're going to take a long. Don't be the person that tries to take a high leverage long to $25 or $30. Just because some other idiot online is telling you we're going to pump doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's important to recognize that securing profits is like, it's literally the only way to be a successful trader. Do you know anybody who's never secured profits on a trade and is very successful? Probably not. I know it seems rhetorical and stupid, but it kind of is. It's crazy to me how greedy people get in these markets right now. We're not in a greed market, folks. We're in a super desperate, crazy, market manipulation, candle wick cities. So in that case, we have to trade until that, which we trade those conditions until they change, right? So that's why you see my margins very tight on our positions here. So just give you some perspective. SUI, we took 57% from a trade 3 days ago. Yesterday, we took a trade with dog with fat and Ethereum, 27 and 37%. Those profits wouldn't happen if we set our targets, at like 100% ranges. I'm shooting for like these 2 to 5% movements based on 10x leverage on average, right? So right in that range. So once more, find something that works well for you, but don't be stuck on stupid. It's not a good call. All that said, taking a quick look here at AVAX on the left-hand side, we can see the local area of liquidation, that heavy chunk at 17 is swept. That's our local high, likely to be the new low, $18 to $19 are those two solid areas of liquidation above the price. So it basically implies that we're in a position where the price action should progress higher based on breaking our local high structure. And we look here, MACD is converging, albeit not super strong. Stochastic swinging up, it's a double convergence. Money flow index still remaining high above the RSI. So while we don't have an RSI break or convergence, so to speak, it's still pretty strong in the overall regard on the daily. All that said, we do have a convergence here being over 50 on the RSI. Most coins are showing that right now at this exact moment, so this is good. Overall, MACD is converging, Stochastic's trying to swing down, but it's also kind of breaking. So all that said, as long as we maintain above 1690 today, I think we're in pretty good shape to see a pivot and a bounce here. So I generally like to trade those pullbacks and the price were to retest this local high, right? And that is, once again, 1690 and some change. You could even say $17. So that is kind of the range I'm looking for, an entry between 17 and 1650 as a close approximate. We look at the hourly. You can kind of see that pretty definitive line there. The price could not pass that level. So we may see a pullback to this local fair value gap. There is also some buy-side liquidity there that has been fully swept. So it just seems pretty clear to me that AVAX is ready to rock and roll. Once more, this is highly contingent on Bitcoin not ripping down lower than 100,000 or more specifically 99K. It could hit that liquidation at 96K. Keep that in mind. It's still there, but once more, it's a risk nonetheless. But don't consider taking any crazy longs at the top. I would recommend waiting for these bullish backtests if possible. I'm just not a FOMO trader personally. How about you? Comment below, let me know what your trading style is. If you're looking for a new exchange or possibly just want to help support the channel, Bitunix has got you covered. We've been partnered with this exchange for over 2 years. It's been our fan favorite for our community, and the reason why is because they take really good care of you. They offer trading reward bonuses as well as a reduction in fees. Best exchange I would recommend at this point. Link down below for more information. Let's take a look here at Cardano next here. So before we jump into the macro structure, which is not phenomenal. I need to kind of update our playout charts here as well. I mainly just have a descending trend line drawn out here to reflect that we are still bearish in this coin, right? Just because we have a good little 4-hour candle does not mean we're back on track. And the same goes for all these coins here for the most part, right? Litecoin was kind of one of the exceptions, but majority of these coins have the same narrative. We're still in a descending trend. All that being said, on the right-hand side, we can see open interest is quite heavy here at about 55 cents. So 55 should be our local bottom based on the simple fact that that's quite obviously an area in which we consistently rejected out, just like that 1690 range for AVAX, right? So we take a look here. Liquidation short delta is still quite high, implying we could see a short squeeze, but there's more people shorting this coin. You can see that, of course, quite clear between 58, 60, and 62 cents. There's a significant amount of liquidation left above, right? So be careful shorting this coin right now. I think it's probably still due to continue to progress higher. There's nothing super significant here letting us know that we're going to continue to progress higher based on a macro perspective. So nothing hidden here, right? So if you're watching some other Cardano idiot telling you that we're going to the metaphorical moon because there's a hidden indicator, I wouldn't trust them. Anybody who uses the verbiage hidden indicator in a message is, I think they're just trying to pull a veil over your eyes. They're somebody that believes in magical Elliott wave theories and things that are just non-existent in trading, or at least, placebos, yes, for one, but for two, mainly just a fool's errand. Anyways, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know how my sentiment on those things. I just think that trading is pretty clear. I mean, as long as you don't use the wrong indicators and you're doing things correctly, you're just building a case on why things are moving in certain directions, right? And also understanding the correlation between Bitcoin and altcoins. I'm not doing that in today's video, mainly because these coins are pumping and Bitcoin is just kind of stalling out. It kind of goes without saying that these coins are doing better than Bitcoin right now, all right? That's kind of the concept. So either way you look at it here, all that said, we can see pretty decent continuation here on the 4-hour time frame. The main thing that I want to pay attention to here is just this local high, right? I don't think we're going to actually see that retested because we had a pretty significant candle here. We'd have to see probably 99,000 or lower to have this candle pull back. But hypothetically, you get lucky and you see 55 cents again. That would be a good consideration for a long, based on the simple fact that obviously that's the area of control. It's that local range, 53 to 55 cents is that local bottom here for us. And I think there's a decent chance continuation higher is likely, okay? Not much else to really note here. I would say for a take profit target, ensure you're not getting super greedy here. We have already kind of addressed, the liquidation, but to touch on it, 60, 62 cents, I'd say that's probably like the better case scenario for us. Because once more, you kind of zoom out, you see there's a lot of control at 64. In other words, there's a high amount of volume above the price action, letting us know that that volume is going to be a resistance. That's going to be an exit liquidity sign, right? So people are going to be starting to sell. And when I say people, I'm referring to market makers, because that's roughly where they like to average out. So all that said, there's a good chance that we see the progression continue higher up to break this descending trend line, but we technically haven't broken the descending trend line yet either. So I can't just in good conscience tell you to take a long right now because it's overextended. Even though it has good potential momentum and it's definitely a bullish sign, the macro structure is still bearish, okay? So please, please, please try not to be a ridiculous trader and just go balls to the wall just yet, okay? Average in, take some trades, of course, don't get me wrong, but try not to be a ridiculous idiot there, all right? Hope that makes sense. I described it correctly. Thanks for being a phenomenal part of my life. Make sure you check out Bitunix too, folks. Excellent exchange. We got a lot of new members new to the community, so I like to make sure to remind you that we have trading bonuses and competitions every single month. Links down below for that. These guys are awesome. Be sure to check them out. Good stuff. We always have that available for you. Anyways, have a good rest of the day. We'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself out there. Bye-bye.